G'day, Lauren.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. It's 2026. It's our first recording.
Yeah, I know. Time's flown. It's already the end of January, and
God,
here
it
we
is.
are just kicking off. It's crazy.
I really like, at the start of the year, between Christmas and New Year's, I sort of do my annual planning. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do some podcasts. We're going to do 2 or 3 by the end of January. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 the year's could sort of come at us, hasn't it? And here we are.
It has.
We were chatting with our CEO, Ellen, on Tuesday and thought, rather than come in and have a guest and talk about a thing, let's just do a snapshot.
Mm,
Where's the SDA market at?
yeah,
And there's some things happening right now that are really relevant, but they're also really relevant a long way back, years past, and it'll be relevant a long way ahead, years in the future. And we
yeah,
kind of wanted today to talk about what is an SDA provider? What's a great one? What do they look like? What do they do? What's a fair price? What should you be paying? What's cheap? What's expensive? Where are the risks? Where are the pitfalls? What is an SDA investment and what
mm,
isn't an SDA investment? And this conversation is timeless. It doesn't matter if it's 2021 at the height of the retail investor frenzy. It doesn't matter if it's going to be in 2029, probably, about what makes a good SDA investment. What is it? What's a provider? What do they do? Where's the value add for customers?
yeah, yeah. Look,
I think this is something that's worth talking to.
I think it's a great time of year to be, reminding us all of what's important and what we should be really, seeking, whether you're an investor or a provider or a colleague in the industry. But you're right, it is timeless. However, I do hope that the conversation shifts, and this is why we're doing this. We're really having these conversations to try and get the information out there to support people to, be involved in the SDA industry in a safe and sustainable way. So yes, I'm very excited to unpack that, and I think it's a timeless but timely conversation as well. Sure.
Let me frame what might be a belief out there in the investor market, right? The belief may sound something like SDA is like any other real estate investment. It just pays a bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So, and this is something that I've been yelling from the top of the hills lately. SDA is not general residential. It does not operate like a regular tenancy. Components of it do, but I think the behind the scenes sort of compliance obligations and framework we have to work within for tenants, for claiming, or compliance and risk. Is just a whole different ball game. You can't compare it to regular residential at all, and it really is a very, very different service delivery than regular property management. Yes, we have to do all of the property management that any other real
All
estate
of that.
agent have to do, but then there's like plus, 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 plus. So yes, we
Let's
do
talk
get.
about some of the pluses, right? I'm both a tenant and a landlord. I think I shared that with you before.
Yeah,
This place here that where I live, I rent, and places other place, I'm a landlord. And when there's a vacancy or when I'm looking for a property, I can put an application in for a property that I want to live at on Tuesday morning,
yeah,
and I could be moving furniture in Saturday morning,
that's right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's how quick residential real estate can work.
yeah,
I've seen people come through our doors kind of expecting that kind of result with
uh,
SDA property.
yeah,
And it's a very sharp correction when you say, listen, mate, you're at least a couple of months from if the stars and moon align and we can get it right and the property's ready and the plan's ready and the NDIS doesn't delay and nothing gets missed and the endorsements are done and everything,
the list goes on. Yes.
maybe 4 weeks for an absolute slick top notch. And we did a coordinated moving like that up in the Caboolture area for a large customer late last year, right? But
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
still
look at.
tidying that up. There's still paperwork being tidied up,
Yeah, a month later. Yeah, absolutely.
right? So the expectation that you can move tenants in quickly, that's the first one you've got to dispel, right? And that impacts holding costs, timelines, what interest you're paying to the bank, your personal, as an investor, your personal cash position and your capacity to pay full freight on your debt until tenants are secured.
That's right. Yep. And that's usually the biggest concern is a client coming to us that's got a property under construction that's almost ready for handover. In the normal residential market, would just ring around a couple of resi real estate agents and list their property with whoever they liked the best. The rate's negotiable, the services are all the same across the board. It is what it is. And there's tenants floating around in every corner. So it's great. This process, we encourage people to get in touch with us sort of 3 to 4 months out at the latest so that we have time to advertise and plug into all of the networks where people are looking for SDA. So you've got to think like on a larger scale, how many tenants are there in the rental market, in the general rental market? There'd be millions, right? That's I don't even look at those numbers.
It's something like 30% of
The
dwellings
population.
people live as a rental, something like that, right? And there's what's Australia, 26, 27 million people,
So
adult
what's
population. You know,
yeah,
there's literally millions.
millions, right?
The addressable market is millions. Yeah,
People with SDA funding is 6%, average of 6% of the NDIS participants, which is we're sitting at about 32,000
right.
nationwide. So we've
Yep.
got to try and find the people in the area that you've built that are actually looking for a home at the right time that your property becomes available. So it's a very, very niche market. And it's something that you really need a longer runway to be able to get your vacancy out there,
Yeah.
to get people through your property, to qualify them, to make sure they've got all their funding in place. And it makes a big
And
difference.
even people in the business, we have these conversations with. This is not unique for someone coming from the street who's learning as they go, because there are fewer retail investors right now, given the changes to finance a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Much fewer.
there's much less mums and dads and just high net worth individuals. There's a few more sophisticated investors. There's a few more groups. There's a few more not for profits, but even people in the NDIS space, but not necessarily doing SDA type work. There's still a lot of education to go through about timelines and what's required. Disability Housing Solutions, we're a registered NDIS provider, just
Hmm.
like a support coordinator, a plan manager,
Yep.
occupational therapist. They're all registered NDIS providers, as are SDA providers.
Hmm.
Your coordinators and plan managers, just like you've got to have your service agreements in place and be compliant and follow the rules, us too, we've got rules to follow. We've got to have all those things in place. And when we work with these external stakeholders, I think there's sometimes, and I'm kind of generalizing. There's some are really great, but sometimes there's a sense of, oh, you're just the real estate. You're the real estate. Just move my client in, will you?
Yeah, there's a fair.
And we're like, listen, guys, we've got our compliance boxes to tick just like you do,
That's right.
and we can't shortcut it just like you can't.
Yep.
We need to work together to speed this up.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
the poor property owner, unaware of all of the things happening in the background. And a lot of the time, our teams spend a huge amount of energy bringing people and stakeholders along for the journey about how it all needs to line up to have someone's client, this participant, we're all trying to wrap ourselves around, move into a fit for purpose place that matches. You've got to make sure that the property matches the endorsement in their plan, make sure it's still fit for purpose. You've got to get an occupational therapist to inspect it. There's
Yep.
always some sort of tweak, even if it's a brand new property, fresh out of the
Yeah.
box, there's always some modifications to happen. The stakeholders and families or Office of Public Guardian all need to endorse it. You've got to get
Yeah.
the endorsements from the participant. You've got to get
It
the
goes
NDS to
up.
sign off on it. The funding's got to start being released. There
Yeah.
is a list like this of things to do in font
Yeah.
size 6 that has to get handled, right?
That was a
And
good
then,
vision. Yes.
oh, mate, but there's so much frustration for the person who's holding the debt.
Yes. And a lack of insight. So, a lot of our conversations when they're coming into the space is trying to give them insight to the complexity and therefore why the cost or why the timeline. Because at the end of the day, an investor is there to get a return on their investment. If that property sits vacant for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 months, then they're not getting a return. They're having to service the loan and they become under financial stress. So I think, like,
And fairly and understandably and reasonably, frustration simmers up.
yeah, and look, I think the biggest thing an investor can do to, positively impact their financial outcome is to work with providers that have the systems and the
Mhm.
experience to actually navigate
You've
being an
you've just
SDA
read
provider.
my mind. I was gonna segue right into, it's like an operational systems kind of
It
thing, right?
It really is. It's operational systems and resourcing. Now, if you come into the industry thinking that this is a regular real estate industry and you're going to, bring your property management skills in and absolutely kill it, you're wrong. You're just wrong. We actually
That's
celebrated
perfect.
our 10-year anniversary this month. Yay for DHS, was very exciting. And it made me sit back and think about where have we been, what have we learnt, and to see that curve of knowledge and understanding and plugging into the NDOs, because we were those people. We had property management, residential sales, and healthcare experience. That's my background, and we brought all that in with all of this enthusiasm to create this new market of real estate that was accessible, and it is exciting, and it is absolutely a great space to be in for property management, but I think what we've learned along the way is that it's not property management. And if you don't have and build those systems, that knowledge, and have a team that really understands the people you're working for, your participants, then it's not going to work. And if I may just say, I think the business model has been really important in getting right to make sure that we have been around this long and that we will continue to be around even longer to serve the industry. Because if we're not sustainable in providing this complex service that looks like property management but doesn't feel like property management, then we won't be around to service the people we care about anyway. So what's the
Yeah.
point?
Look, that's a relevant point to raise
Mm,
because look, we've heard last week of another SDA provider has now gone under, a reasonable sized one. This is the third or fourth one in 12 months of,
yep.
of a medium to large-ish kind of SDA operation. And this is not even counting all the smaller ones that kind of drop away on a weekly
Yeah.
basis. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
often, there's providers that kind of all of a sudden found themselves handling 10 or 20 or 30 properties because they started with some family or friends and it grew, and
Yeah.
they kind of come and go. And because of everything you just mentioned, it's quickly realized unless you're going to turn it into a full-on business, you can't
Mm,
just handle 10 or 20 or 30 homes. It's just too
yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this provider, they've had some fairly intelligent people work for them. They've had some fairly experienced people work for them. They've had some fairly okay resources, and they still bumped up against one of the most challenging parts of being an SDA provider is in the world of tenant procurement,
Mm-hmm.
and having your properties be noticed and looked at by participants who'd like to live in them, and the stakeholder universe that will support that decision, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of the hardest part of this.
Yeah.
And if you're not resourced to do that, then, famous old saying, you can't sell a secret. You've got to get the word out about what you're offering and where, and
You
provide the
have
fee.
you have to expose the vacancy. Essentially, if people can't find you, or you haven't, got that listing out into networks in front of people that know, will need it, or will be referring people that need it. If you don't have a good marketing system behind your vacancy tracking, then, you might be charging a cheap percentage for property management, but you're not managing much because there's not many tenants, which is
And that's the
why.
trick, because everything we're talking about costs money. Like, we have conversations weekly, sometimes daily, with people who come to us and they're inquiring about our services, and we'll be straight. And I don't think it's a secret out in the market what we charge, right? We've got a 3-tiered structure for our tenancy onboarding and marketing fees.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you go to any real estate and say, I'd like to sell my property or list my property, to go, here's the fee we charge to get everything on realestate.com and do the posters and the placards for sale. And
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I sold the property just a couple of years ago, and they wanted $4,000 or $5,000 to put it on realestate.com and print a sign, right?
Yeah, yeah, my brother used to go around knocking the signs in, that was
Right.
one of
And
the
that,
first
a-
ones, yeah.
and I know that there's going to be 15 people lined up on Saturday morning at the open home, right?
Yeah.
It's genuinely just shooting fish in a barrel for the
Yeah.
mainstream real estate stuff, especially at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yes.
And for us, we've got 3 tiers. It's $5,000, $7,500, and $10,000, depending on where the property is, what the property is, what the incidence of saturation in that area, that there's competing properties,
Yep.
right? How
Yep.
many are vacant in that area? How many? Again, there's a list like this about what goes into making the tenancy matching and marketing fee, what we charge, what
Mm.
we let, and we try and keep it as low as we can because we don't want to overcharge. And I've crunched these numbers, Lauren, and every tenancy marketing matching fee we've ever charged, we've still spent more than we've charged.
Absolutely, every time.
We lose money. So
Yeah,
it's just that fee is subsidizing the cost. It's terrifically expensive
yeah, yeah, it
to go out
really is.
to stakeholders.
And when you think the national average, when the national average of filling a vacancy on as per the external NDIS or some Summer Foundation maybe data is 6 to 12 months to find a tenant, you've got to think, okay, somebody's got to do that advertising in order to get that tenant in 6 to 12 months.
Or
Now,
a
if we're going
team
to
of
put
people
in
in our case.
yeah, if we're going to put a team of people on advertising that vacancy for the expected 6 to 12 months, hopefully we can do it earlier. And a lot of the time we do. But we've got to resource a team to be able to do that. And we've got to resource that team from the day you sign on, the day we start putting things online and getting people to networking and sending staff out to site. It's not, like you said, it's subsidized, it's covering cost. But because investors often don't consider the work that's going into it, or they're comparing it to how a general resi market works,
Yeah.
there's this disparity.
And what we tend to see and where we kind of get a bit of pushback is there's people out there charging a lot less, a couple of $1,000 or even $0, right? Trying to win the listing. There's an old phraseology in real estate land that, real estate agents, you need to win the listing, get the listing, get the listing,
Yeah,
again, back in normal real estate world, real estate agents live and die off their capacity to get listings, right?
right.
Without listings, they don't have cash flow when they own a
Yep.
business. And there's a bit of especially for operators who've come in from real estate and they're trying to do real estate stuff with SDA, they want to get the listing.
Yes.
And so they work and work and work and make these promises to get the listing and take a couple of $1,000 here and there. And they go, oh, a bit of money, bit of money. But again, it doesn't go far.
No.
And if you're not charging what you need to charge to do the work that needs to be done to have a positive result in tenant procurement, guess
Hmm.
what? Vacancy rates are through the roof.
Yep.
And the one that went out last week, I think I downloaded all the data off SDA Finder. And this is available to anyone. Anyone in the world can go to the NDIS website, go to SDA Finder, download CSV formatted results of every SDA provider in Australia
Yep. We
and
do it
every
regularly.
every property detail, every vacancy detail. It's all public domain stuff, right? So I did that, and this provider that went under the other week, their vacancy rate was 33%, right?
Mm,
We
mm,
know they're levying low fees and low percentages. Our vacancy rate is 3% on that same data set. 3,
mm.
33,
Yep.
right? Because we charge what is necessary to do the work to get it done. Now,
That's
and,
right.
and our pass-through commissions are 12%.
Mm,
DHS charges 12%. A lot of
mm,
people charge 12%. I know of a couple charging 15%. A lot of
mhm,
people are charging 10%. And I,
mm,
I have a view that 10% is not enough to meet all then your compliance obligations. Because we're
mm.
talking about firstly what we need to do to secure a tenant. And
Yeah.
then ongoingly, we've got this incredibly complex scheme called the NDIS, right?
Mhm.
It's literally schemes in the name, National Disability Insurance Scheme. And the compliance is stratospheric. I've never worked in a sector with such compliance.
Yeah.
There's far more compliance in NDIS than there is in financial services, for example. Far more.
I was gonna compare it to financial services. My husband's been
Far
in that
more.
industry for a
Yeah.
long time
Yeah.
and, watching him go through all of those compliance checks and the growth of that industry and the changes over the last 10 years has been enormous. But you know what? The NDIS has well and truly, superseded it. So
I reckon twice as much. Honestly, I
yeah,
reckon it's twice as much.
you're
So,
right. But look,
so,
if
so
I
if you're not charging enough to pay your staff and have that compliance, because we get audited. If you fail the audit, you lose your license and you're out, right?
yeah,
You've got to have enough. And it just comes back to, you know, I want to work with the business I know is robust. I want to
mm,
make sure that I'm happy to pay the money if I'm getting the service and the business is sound. Everyone needs to make a profit, right? If a business is not making profit, alarm bells. And at 10%, I think you're sailing so close to the wind that
mm.
with the smallest wobble, you're not making it back. You're negative.
And this
It's
is
not
the
healthy.
thing, like you said, you're sailing too close to the wind, and it's as simple as that. we know that getting a tenant in so that you can realize that 10% fee takes a lot of resource. So if people are only charging 10% and not charging for their advertising and sort of getting people on board with that hook, then the chances are is that they don't have the resources to do the work to actually get you the income and apply their commission to. And look, I'm not saying that it's wrong. And I'm not saying that we're doing it perfectly either, but what is important, and it's not just for us as an SDA provider, it's anyone, is that you're able to do the work that's actually required for the fees that you're charging. And I do have this sense of worry seeing another provider go down. I've seen another provider try and swoop in and offer something very similar. And the storyline to me is just repeating itself. And look, I'm a little bit watching the moon cycle and astrology wise, and I'm very, very aware that 2025 was a tough year for SDA. There was a couple of huge big media incidences and a lot of negativity in the SDA industry. And I'm really very passionate about showing everyone the bright side and the great outcomes. And we've discussed this year, really sharing more of the wins because there are a lot of them.
There are. Point. Yeah, we don't want to be doomy and gloomy, do we? It's a good point.
No, I don't want to
We
see
have
the
so
same
many
pattern.
people that we put a roof over their head and then their quality of life just really pops, and there's so many then positive outcomes and the flow and effects are enormous.
Yeah,
And we don't talk about that enough. We don't.
yeah,
And,
yeah. So
that's one of our
that's
goals
one
this
of our
year
goals.
to share
Yeah,
more of it this year.
it is. It is because 2026 is a new year. There's a lot of really good energy this year, and I want to do our bit in making sure that we've actually learnt from those lessons in 2025. So we're having this conversation here just to remind everybody, DHS might not be your provider, fine, but please ask these questions. Make sure the company you're looking at has the resources, has the experience, and really is going to be able to do the work. I put a post up on LinkedIn yesterday because I was really feeling it. It wasn't well yesterday, but it was because of these conversations that I'm still having. And I thought, no, we're not having these conversations in 2026 anymore. And if we are, it's going to be for education and support, not for last minute phone calls. Please help me. I made the wrong decision 12 months ago and I'm in huge financial distress because my
Yeah.
provider hasn't been
And
able to do the
we're
thing.
still taking those calls, right?
Yeah.
And it's a sad but truism that
Yeah.
sometimes we have this chat with a customer, and like you said just before we started recording, it's nigh on impossible to explain in a really detailed way the complexities of SDA in a 45-minute call with an owner
Yeah. Yeah.
and share really what it takes
Yeah.
to do this job well when they're being offered a couple of percent less and a couple of $1,000s less to get started, right? And there's this phenomenon called opportunity cost.
Yes.
And essentially what that means is for every week you're not getting something, the cost of that is greater than paying a little bit more now to get a better result earlier.
That's right. Yeah, the
So
opportunity.
if you're trying to chase a couple of percent off your commissions or a couple of $1,000s off your matching fee, and
Yeah.
you're vacant 2, 3, 4 weeks longer than maybe you should have been, then the cost of that is greater than just paying someone a good rate who's well resourced, who's got experience, who might charge it a little bit more, but they've got the runs on the board. And
Yeah.
that's really the messy. And that's the same if you're going to hire an electrician. It's the same if you're going to hire a builder. It's the same if you're going to engage a lawyer. It's the same conversation.
Yeah,
You
it
get
really is.
what you pay for.
Yeah. Yeah, you get what you pay for. That's a good motto for 2026, I think. And look, circling back to your opportunity cost, when you look at it, and we've got a couple of unit developments coming on at the moment, and both of them have been a bit slow moving. And at night time, I sit there and I think, gosh, this is costing that owner $1,800 a week in vacancy. And they're umming and ahhing about an advertising fee. And I think, okay, how can we support that owner to understand, to educate them, and to make a decision? And again, whether it's us or someone else doesn't bother me, but please make a decision, because sitting there and doing nothing or sitting there and looking for the cheapest service is not going to solve their problem.
Yeah, I agree.
And it just pains me. It's only because I really care about it, and because I hate seeing people in financial distress. They do call and they are upset, and it's a huge stress. I mean, I've had mortgage stress in my life, and it's the worst,
Yeah,
absolute worst.
yeah.
So it's from our want to help and support that these conversations come. And this is the best way we know how to support people, is providing a stable, realistic business model that really knows what we're doing, and to stick around and make it work. So
Look, similar to you, I also threw a post up last week on LinkedIn to sort of talk a little bit about this. And
yes.
I suppose to wrap up the conversation, I would say if you are an SDA owner and your provider does start to suffer some distress, look, it happens. We're not going to throw rocks. Business is tough out there. NDOs
Mm,
is tough out there. Businesses are coming and going, right? Just because a business fails, it doesn't make the people in that business bad people. It
no.
doesn't mean they've done a bad job. It's tough out there. And
Mm,
if you're not really onto it and charging what you need to charge, you're going to have strife.
yeah.
So if you get notification from a provider that they are in distress, please do this, right?
Mm,
The the provider should send you a notice to say, listen, unfortunately, the business is folding or something worse to that effect. To apologize to our valued customers. Here is a list of providers we recommend you reach out to and engage with. They're all quality providers that we would be happy for you to work with, and list a few providers. And then you need to go out and then make your decisions, right?
mm,
That should happen. That's what we hope
mm,
happens. That happens
mm,
to you. Not we want it to happen to you, but if it happens, we hope that that's how it would happen.
mm,
Now, what we have seen every time in the last 12 months when providers are going under, really disappointingly, is that customers are kind of all pushed to one other favored provider.
mm.
That's an atrocious outcome.
It
It's
has
against
been.
it's against what's called sharp practices. It's not an official policy, but it's an unofficial set of guidelines within NUS that shouldn't happen. Every single time so far, it's led to worse outcomes for
Yeah.
everyone involved, participants, stakeholders, and landlords. Every
Yeah.
time, if you do get some correspondence saying we're going to push you across to this provider,
You have
please,
a choice. You have a
please
choice.
Google SDA providers, make some calls, ring around. You choose where you get to go. You don't need to be pushed anywhere.
Yeah.
Please do that.
Yep. I think that's a good message, is you've got choice, especially at that time where, if your provider is no longer going to be your provider for whatever reason, that is often an opportunity to have a conversation. And like I said, ask the right questions, find out about their resourcing, and just have a think about what's really important to you. Is it cheap fees or is it good service? And it'll make a world of difference to you in 12 months' time.
I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover, Lauren, for this
I
chat.
mean, we could talk about these things. Yeah. Look, I do want to unpack some operational systems that I think sometimes come out in these situations, but perhaps we can do that in a couple of days' time, just to sort of follow on. So,
Yeah, I think we're at about half an hour now, and really this episode, team, is something that we can kind of use again and again. So I don't want to get too detailed in any one area. It's really, this is what's happening out there. This is what you need to look for. This is why you should find people who charge certain ways and have a certain philosophy.
yeah,
Um, and please don't just let you just. I know price is always a factor. To say it's not a factor is infantile. Of course, it's a factor, but it's not the only factor, right? So please make sure you've got a full scope of the whole conversation. It's not just about price.
yeah,
Okay.
good. All right, we'll
Done.
unpack some of the nuances of switching and what makes a smooth process
That's a good
later.
idea. Let's do that next time. Well,
Yeah,
until next time.
yeah, perfect. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.